Hey crafty friends, ready to roll up your sleeves and create something absolutely adorable? Today I'll be using BB Cameron's Big Bicycle Etch dies and doing some paper piecing to put together a stunning summer picnic scene card. Whether you're a card making pro or just getting started, you'll love how easy and satisfying it is to assemble the cutest bicycle to adding those perfect details to this masculine card I made for my son, but there are endless possibilities with this die set, so let's dive in. The main die set I'm using is Spellbinder's Big Bicycle Etch Dies by BB Cameron, and you can use this die set to create both masculine and feminine bikes, but here's the big outline for the bike, and there are pieces like the basket, the bottle, and other fine details like the handlebars and cork stopper. I'll be using all of these, but I won't be creating the pop-up mechanism for the bike today. Here's the wheel of the bike. I cut this out from silver metallic cardstock, and you can see the tires are pretty thin. I want a slightly thicker tire, so I'm going to use these two circle dies to create a slightly wider tire. I'll place them symmetrically apart, tape them down, and cut them out using my die cutting machine. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over to my die cutting machine, and I will be right back. I've done all the die cutting, which took quite a bit of time, and I have more die cuts to show you later on, but first let's focus on assembling the bike. I'm going to assemble all the parts in front of you now, starting with the maroon bike. The inside of the die cuts this out, and it will layer on top of the bike outline. For the wheels, you saw me just cut them out of black cardstock, so they look like they've been mounted on the metal rims, making the bike appear more realistic. Now this die cuts out the different parts like the seat, pedal, and other components. I had some trouble cutting through the metallic paper, so I had to layer it with some thin white cardstock to get a proper cut. And since this one die cuts out the seat and the pedals, I had to use the die on black cardstock to cut out the seat and pedals because I didn't want it to be silver. Now the seat will go here, and I am not going to use the other extra pieces on this card. I'll also have two baskets on the bike, one here and one there. I'll cut down the size of the basket and show you how I'm going to do that in just a second. I'm using Barely Art liquid glue with a precision tip, and the liquid glue gives me some time to move things around if I need to. But once I've applied the glue, I'll let the glue sit for a bit so it dries a little and gets a little tacky, which will prevent it from oozing out. So let this sit for 2 seconds while I work on the basket. I'm going to curl the basket slightly so it looks nice and rounded. That will also allow me to put some items inside the basket. I'll use a regular pencil and then just gently curl the edges. Now it's nice and rounded, and I'm going to just cut off the top row of the basket because this one I want to be a little bit shorter since it's going to sit on the side. And I'm just going to apply the glue and again set that aside so it gets a little nice and tacky while I now go ahead and stick the bike frame onto the outline. And I can see a little bit of glue still oozed out, so I just took my pokey tool and tried to remove the glue, but then I kind of ripped the paper a little bit, but I think it's going to be fine once everything is in place, and that's not going to be that noticeable. I'm done with that. Now time to perform the surgery on this basket. So I'm going to place that right over the basket, the grid. And now you see the basket is a little bit shorter. And I'll just remove the extra fibers. I'm seeing a lot of fibers, so I'm just going to remove them very carefully and then cut off the edge just a little bit because there's a slight overhang. And that will smooth out the outline of the basket really well. And I always use this fluffy makeup brush that I got from the dollar store to remove all the extra, the glue, residue and fibers, etc. And I'm again going to curl this basket as well so I can insert more details into it. Okay, so now I'll attach the baskets to the bike. I'll put glue on 3 sides and I'm going to again set this aside while I work on the other one. I forgot to mention that this basket was cut with this die, and if you don't use both the die, the inside and the outline, you are not going to get the basket cut out. You'll only get the grid if you use the inside. So you need to use both the outline as well as the grid to cut out the basket. So I'll just place the baskets now and just press down the sides to make sure they adhere. And where the basket hasn't really adhered completely, I'll apply a little bit of glue to the corner of that strip of paper, a really high-tech device here, and I'm going to just slide the paper in and not rip the paper, rip the die cut, or kind of twist it out of shape. Time to assemble the tires on the rim. I'm going to apply the glue on the edges so I don't see any glue marks on the rim itself. So the tire is sitting nicely on the rim and it looks so much more realistic than if I would have just stayed with the silver frame. And that's an eraser for my glue. So anytime I have extra glue, I just use the eraser to gently rub it off. It's a very, very handy tool that every crafter should have. So now I'm going to assemble this bit, but you'll see me very shortly realize my mistake. You can tell I'm not really a biker, so I didn't really assemble it properly. But right now I'm going to adhere the tiny pieces, which is the handlebar, the pedal, and the seat. And I'm using my pickup tool, which is so handy. It's got a wax tip and it's really handy for picking small things up and placing them. And there you go. I just added that metal, whatever it's called, and I'm using a magnet to hold it down so it adheres properly. Yeah, and I also love using my tweezers for little things. So between the tweezers and the pickup tool, you are all set if you are working with tiny detail pieces. So you see the bike is almost completely assembled and it was so easy. The difficult part is, I think, the die cutting, because there are so many pieces to cut out. But once you're done cutting it out, it's so easy to assemble them. I love the Barely Art glue also because it comes with that precision tip, which is so useful when applying glue to narrow areas. You see there, I just realized that I had made the mistake of attaching the basket as well as that silver plate, whatever it's called, because the wheel needs to go down first before the other parts. And naturally that cannot be salvaged, so I'm going to cut out another piece. But I'm also trying to scrape off the extra paper that's already stuck on the frame, because that is going to make the entire piece look kind of wobbly and wavy. So I'm trying to remove the excess paper that's already stuck on the frame there. And finally, the wheel seems to go down, but I just wanted to take a look at the picture and use it as a guide, which is always very, very helpful. And I just made sure that I'm doing it right this time, because I didn't want to have to cut out the entire bike and redo it. And you notice that I'm applying the glue and setting it aside for a few minutes, or a minute, actually, not a few minutes, because you don't want the glue to dry completely. And that is really helping with the oozing out of the liquid glue, because it dries a little bit so it doesn't ooze. And anywhere I have little gaps, I'm using my little strip of paper with the glue on it and inserting it underneath and applying the glue. Time to put the basket back in its place, but I wanted to cut out that piece again, since the original one is really not going to work. And this time I realized that it's better to just use my reverse tweezer and hold that piece down while it dries, so that it doesn't kind of keep lifting off. And now it's a good time to put that metal piece back on and the little black dot on it. Honestly, the bike is done, and all I'm doing is removing that excess glue from the wheels, from the metallic paper, etc., with that eraser. So at this point, I just want to explain that here I am putting the card together. And if you want to see how I created the double Z fold, you can use the link in the description of this video and go check out my other video that focuses on how I put this card base together. You'll also see me creating that picnic scene in that video. So please go ahead, watch that video, because I wanted to focus mainly on piecing the big bike together. So I cut out the bottles from acetate. Now I'm placing the bottles into the baskets to see how they'll tilt, so I can create some fake champagne using a gold Sharpie. So I want the level, you know how if you tilt the bottle, the level of the liquid is at an angle. So I wanted to get the angle so I can make it look more realistic. And I also stuck the labels on the acetate as well as the bottle tops. And I'm using some glitter gel pens to add some more details to the bottle label and the bottle top. So I'm using a silver glitter pen to add the details, and I'm also just writing HBD, happy birthday, on the label, since this is going to be a birthday card for my son. I love creating my cards in a way that they make sense. Your imagination is the limit, and it's your creative piece of work, so you interpret it the way you want. But I like to sometimes make it realistic, especially if I'm creating a seam card. Then I want to tell a story through that seam, and this story that I'm trying to tell is that, and because my son loves to bike, that is the story I'm trying to tell here, that he is out on a bike ride on a beautiful summer day, and he's going for a picnic for his birthday, and he's biking along with a couple of bottles of champagne and glasses, wine glasses, to enjoy a little picnic. So that is the story I wanted to tell in this card, and how easy this was to put together. Again, if you want to see how I assemble the tiny die cuts, please check the other video and you will find the details there. And I really didn't want to waste time doing the entire thing in this video because I wanted to focus only on the big bicycle etched die set. I've used dies from 2 other sets by Spellbinders, and the green grass is from a die set by Altenew. And if you're interested, the other video that I've linked to in the description has a downloadable PDF with all the measurements for the card base and the other details. So if you go to the other video, you can actually download the PDF. You don't need an email. It's a free download, so you can grab that PDF that has all the detailed lists of supplies, measurements, what have you. Okay, so the card is done, and I also went ahead and created a custom envelope for this card simply because the card wouldn't fit. And if you want to know how I created the envelope, there's a link to another video that shows you how to create custom envelopes. And all I had done was just added some stencil. I ink blended over that happy birthday stencil, and that's how I created a custom envelope for the card. So the card stands up beautifully. It's a beautiful display piece, and if you like this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up, and please do subscribe to my channel because I'd love your support to help grow my little channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you again for watching and for spending this time with me.